Hello again. Welcome to the Family Federation Report. My name is Geoff Fyers. In this program, we're going to introduce to you the Little Angels Korean Folk Ballet. Now, currently they're doing a world tour, going to those 16 nations that participated in the Korean War in 1951, 52, 53. We're going to show you some clips of the Little Angels, and we're going to give a special interview with the current president of the New Zealand Korean War vets, Jim Newman. He's going to explain a little bit about his experience in the Korean War at that time. So I hope you're able to take time and watch the program. Welcome.
June 25th, 1950, at 4:20 a.m. The sounds of marching, gunshots, and tanks piercing through the jet-black darkness. Under the careful support of the Soviet Union and Communist China, the North Korean Communists made a surprise attack on the South, which began the horror that was the Korean War. With the Soviet Union's tanks leading the way, the North Korean army crossed the 38th parallel. Instantly, the Republic of Korea was engulfed in the flames of gunpowder. Seoul was taken in only 3 days, and in less than a month, the North Koreans had reached the defense line of the Nakdong River. Korea's situation was as precarious as a candle flickering in the wind. The Han River bridges were demolished, and the multitudes of refugees had to flee down to the south, with no thoughts other than to escape the onslaught of the North Korean tanks and troops. The procession of people fleeing to survive continued endlessly. The loud wailings of mothers who lost their children. The children calling out to their mothers while holding onto the lifeless bodies of their parents. The starved cries of orphaned children left all alone filled the skies. Right after the Korean War broke out, after inspecting the Han River defense line, General MacArthur reported to U.S. President Truman, the U.S. must send its troops without delay. Upon hearing General MacArthur's report, President Truman immediately made the decision to send the U.S. troops. If this decision to send U.S. soldiers had been delayed even 3 more days, the Republic of Korea, as we know it today, could not exist. Following the U.S. initiative, 15 other UN member nations also sent their troops to Korea to help stave off the North Korean invasion. The USA, the UK, Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, France, New Zealand, the Philippines, the Republic of South Africa, Turkey, Thailand, Greece, Belgium, Luxembourg, Ethiopia, and Colombia. They made the counterattack under the banner of the UN flag for the first time in history. With the participation of the UN troops, the North Korean soldiers' surprise attack was met with a massive resistance that they could never have imagined. Through the bloodshed by the brave soldiers who cried, "We will defend or die," the Nakdong River defense line was defended to the very last. On September 15, 1950, General MacArthur launched the Incheon landing, which was the turning point of the war. Then suddenly, the Red Chinese Army crossed the Yalu River. The Korean War took on a whole new face. More than 190,000 of the UN troops that participated in the Korean War were sacrificed. It was a war that almost marked the end of Korea. For the first time, the independence and the freedom of a nation was defended under the banner of the UN flag. The brave soldiers of the 16 UN member nations came to a foreign land, the name of which they did not know, and shed their blood for its freedom. Our freedom was won through the sacrifice of those war heroes. The 3 years of war took everything we had away from us. We lost our children, our parents, our brothers and sisters, and the basis upon which to continue our lives. More than 3 million people were killed or wounded. It was the most violent war, one which left behind it the greatest number of casualties in the shortest time ever in the history of humankind. At a time when we were living in pain and suffering on the ruins wrought by the war, The world perceived Korea only as a nation of poverty, famine, and orphans. However, in the midst of this tragic state, there were angels who appeared and showed the world what we truly were. In May of 1962, in an effort to revitalize the culture and artistic spirit of the Korean people, and to show the rest of the world that tradition and art were still alive in Korea, Reverend Sun Myung Moon created the Little Angels of Korea. Children are the universal symbol of peace. Overcoming difficulties in a country that was still recovering from war, the children opened wide the wings of angels and traveled across the 5 oceans and the 6 continents to introduce the beauty of Korea to billions of people worldwide. After 3 years of hard work and preparation, the first overseas performance of the Little Angels was carried out before U.S. President Eisenhower. After the first overseas performance at the White House in the U.S. and at Buckingham Palace in the U.K., at the UN General Assembly Hall in New York, which had never been opened for performances, the Little Angels of Korea danced and sang for peace. At the Kremlin Palace of the Soviet Union, crossing over the walls of the Cold War, and singing of freedom at the center of Pyongyang, they crossed the wall between South and North Korea. The Little Angels of Korea finally united the world as one. They have worked for nearly half a century as the dancing and singing angels of peace and the little diplomatic delegates representing friendship and goodwill. The Little Angels of Korea have become the face of Korea and the best gift we can give to the world. Next year, the year 2010, marks the 60th anniversary of the Korean War. The incredible prosperity and affluence of modern-day Korea is a testimony to the sacred sacrifices made by those who fought for its freedom and independence. We have been forgetting about them far too long. We have a long-standing debt to pay to the brave soldiers of the 16 UN member nations that sent troops to the war. Most of them are now approaching 80 years of age, and without them, the Korean War would surely become a forgotten war. The 60th anniversary of the Korean War is the last opportunity for us to repay them with our gratitude for their noble sacrifices. Before it is too late, the Little Angels of Korea will go to those Korean War veterans and sing and dance in front of them to convey to them that their sacrifices had been worthwhile. From June of 2010 to February of 2011, the 16 UN member nations tour. The Little Angels of Korea, in commemoration of the 60th anniversary of the Korean War, will visit the 16 nations to which Korea owes its freedom and peace. Beginning in the U.S., a nation that sacrificed the most in the Korean War. On to Ottawa, Canada, and to Bogota of the Republic of Colombia is only the starting point. They will make a second tour to the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand. On the third tour, they will then visit the UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France in Europe, and the Republic of South Africa and Ethiopia in Africa, and finish their tour of gratitude by performing lastly in Greece and Turkey in Europe. The Little Angels of Korea, who with the Korean flag in their hearts have planted Korea in the rest of the world, will convey our consolation and gratitude through their Korean art performances. The Little Angels of Korea will visit each of the 16 participant nations of the UN and visit the veterans who are still alive and their families to show that Korea is a nation that never forgets the gratitude it owes.
La,
To a nation whose name they did not know, they gave their youth and their lives. The Republic of Korea will never forget you. And now, the little angels will come to you.
So we have with us today Jim Newman. He's the current president of the New Zealand Korean War Veterans Association. And we'd like to ask him a few questions about his experiences and his thoughts about Korea. So Jim, they say that there's a feeling that Korea is like a forgotten war. What would you think about that? Why would that be so?
Well, the Korean War, of course, was never widely reported in the press throughout the world, in fact, and certainly so not in New Zealand, and never has been. We've called it the Forgotten War because nobody can remember even when it was. A few people can, but not many, apart from the Korean War veterans themselves.
So you were a young man at the time going over to war, Jim. What was it like with all these young men going over there?
Well, I joined the Navy at 16 years and 2 months old, and I went to Korea at 17 years and 8 months old. And I was with about 20 other people who were under 18, and we were all on the Hawea when we went in March 1951 to Korea. Yes, it was quite a dramatic experience for a 17-year-old to be going to war.
So did you have much of an idea at that young time of the significance of the war, the Korean War?
No, not really. Had very little significance to us until we got there. We didn't really see much of the Koreans until we were there for many months. We saw a few of their patrol boats because they came alongside our ship and got food and water off us. But apart from that, we saw very little of the Koreans themselves because we were out at sea. We were a guard ship waiting for aircraft to crash. Anybody who'd been shot down, their crash zone was in our patrol zone, and that's why we were there for a large degree, to a large degree. But we did shell the coastline. We did have shore raiding parties and things like that. So we did see a wee bit of them, but not a great deal. I didn't see much of them until I went ashore for 10 days. And then that's when I saw the Koreans in the main.
So you've got a map over there, Jim. Whereabouts was your sphere of activity?
Well, we were based in Japan, and we used to go across here, up here, and most of our activities were around this island here and just north of it. This is Pyongyang-do, or we called it Pyongyang-do in those days. It's now got a name change, and to Chodo. And our patrol zone was in between those two lands. But we did raid the coast in here, up here, and on one occasion we went up into the Yalu River, which is between Communist China and North Korea with the British frigate Black Swan. And we went up there in the middle of the night, and we went up about 20 miles, I think, and the idea was to shell a power station up on the North Korean side. How successful we were, I don't know, but it was the most frightening time of my life. Very exciting, but very frightening. We sailed from this area around here with Black Swan, and during the day we just sailed up here, and then at night time we came in from the sea into the mouth of the river, and then sailed up it for about an hour and a half until we got fairly well up. And then we turned around and came back down, and we fired everything we could on the way back down. We didn't shoot anything going up, but we did fire a lot of 4-inch guns, pom-pom guns, Bofors and Ehrlichins. We fired them all that could bear on North Korea at that time. We also went up the Han River. That's this area here. Our ship was the first ship to go up there, and we surveyed. The Hawea surveyed the mouth of the Hawea, because there's a lot of shifting sand up there and shifting mud, and you get caught on the mud banks. And a couple of frigates did, in fact, get caught on the mud banks up there. And so that's what we did in the main. And then we'd come back down here, go back to Japan, and then on other occasions we would go with, on this side we operated mainly with the British. On this side we operated almost exclusively with the Americans. And one day we went up here and we fired on trains, because the train tracks are very close to the coastline here. And we got right up here one day, and you could actually see Russia in the distance. And a Russian aircraft came over and had a look at us, but it had Russian markings on it, and so it couldn't do anything to us because they weren't technically at war with us. But they didn't do anything. They left us alone. We turned around and came back down. But on the way we'd shoot up all the trains that were coming down to feed the North Korean troops.
So how long were you over there for?
I was there for 1 year. We left New Zealand on the 8th of March, I think it was, 1951, and we got back on I think it was the 12th of March, 1952.
So looking back on it, you've been back to Korea, I believe. What do you think of it now? What do you think of Korea now that you had your experience there? And
yes, well, I've been back 4 times since the war, and went back there twice in 1999. I went up there with Helen Clark to unveil the New Zealand War Memorial at the Busan United Nations War Cemetery, and I was up there in June this year as well for the 60th commemorations of the start of the Korean War.
So this particular war, are you happy with how things have turned out? Oh
yes, one has to be very thankful that the Koreans have done so well. They went, when I was walking across Korea, and I came in off the Han River, went over to Seoul, and then up to the New Zealand front lines, up here somewhere. And what I saw there was just ruins and people heading south towards Busan. And they were the wives, the children, and the old people, and they were all heading south because that's where safety was. There was nothing there. It was bombed out, ruined, nothing at all. And you go back, or when I went back in June this year, you see a very vibrant, live country who are very well aware that 60 years ago they had nothing at all. They've worked very hard, extremely hard, to get where they are, and good on them. And for our part of it, that we played, I'm very proud of that part. Without the United Nations going in there, there's no doubt about it, Korea would have been lost to the West in total. But we went in there and we won. Or we didn't win, but we got to the stage where the North Koreans didn't want to invade the South anymore. And that was a win in my book.
So I suppose you probably think that if you'd not gone there, those UN forces, the whole of Korea would have been like North Korea is today.
Oh, without a doubt, it would have been. Oh, yeah, without a doubt, it would have been a communist state, and the people would be subjected to a military regime who only look after themselves. And I'm certain that the people of South Korea would have been far, far worse off going to, if the North Koreans had won. I'm very thankful that the United Nations troops did win.
So we've got up and coming a Little Angels tour, which has come here to honour and I guess give their thanks to the New Zealanders who were involved in that, and also even the government who sent them over there. What do you think about the Little Angels coming to do that?
Well, in June, my wife and I were in Korea, and we went to a banquet put on by the Korean government. The Prime Minister was there, and nearly every country that was represented during the Korean War was there as well, all on revisits at the invitation of the Koreans. And at the end of the banquet there was entertainment, and who should come on but the Little Angels. They came on towards the end. They put on several shows for us, and they are extremely good. I would recommend them to anybody. They're very professional in what they do, and they're good, great kids. Yep.
So this tour has been going to 16 nations, of those nations that were involved in the war. What do you think about that? It's a great cost, I suppose, for them to go to all those nations and give this performance.
No doubt about that, there is a cost to it. But the Koreans have been very, very generous towards the United Nations who fought at the Korean War, and especially to us. We are very grateful for what the Koreans have done for all the veterans. This is a part of that, and we appreciate very deeply what the Koreans have done, when they in fact are doing for veterans up to this day. But we're all getting older, so I would be one of the youngest ones, and I'm 77. So,
sort of like a last chance to be able to say thank you, I think, to all you guys who really gave it, risked your lives, obviously, you know, in going over there. So it's a good time, I think, very timely.
It is very timely, and we're very appreciative of it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim, for your
right, my
time
pleasure.
to explain your experience. So there we have it. This is the Jim Newman, the current president of the Korean War Veterans Association. So thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you very much.
The Little Angels also visited veterans' hospitals where war veterans were still living with the pain of the war. While the Little Angels made preparations for performance with the hopes of alleviating their pain, these long-serving soldiers began to gather around the small makeshift stage within the hospital. 60 years ago, Korea was able to recover its peace and prosperity at the price of great sacrifice. Yet these soldiers lost comrades and had to sacrifice their strong and healthy bodies. Most of these soldiers were in their 80s or older. They looked back to the battles they fought in their younger years and thanked the Little Angels for remembering them and coming to visit them. The beautiful performance by these small and young angels helped heal the scars from the war. The visit by the Little Angels that day and the fact that they were being remembered was the best treatment they could ever have received. The curtains for the first performance were raised, revealing the beauty of the little angels. The children danced together in sync and sang in a single voice. Each gesture was filled with the soul and devotion of the troop, expressing their appreciation to the Korean War veterans for saving Korea. The performance by these children from a small nation instantly captured the hearts of the audience, who did not even know the culture or language of Korea.
So, wasn't that a nice program, seeing the little angels and hearing the testimony of Jim Newman? Sometimes we forget about the great sacrifices that were made in the past. We're living in a beautiful, peaceful nation of New Zealand, and we should always remember those who sacrificed so that we could live as we do. If you'd like to know more about the little angels, you can see their website there at the bottom of the screen, find out more about them. Or if you'd like to find out more about the Family Federation, call us on our 0800 number, 0800 True Family. So until next time, bye for now.